So now that we've taken some time to understand the importance of a user task flow and the user task steps, we're going to take a look at how we create the wireframes from each one of those task steps. Each one of those task steps will represent a screen with which we'll use, once we've designed it, we'll use the prototype wireframe screens to test interactivity. The important thing to keep in mind is that we are testing interactivity. We're not testing whether the user likes a certain icon or likes a certain color palette. That comes later in the process. Right now we're just testing with rudimentary wireframes using very simple imagery, the actual usability and interactivity associated with the tasks, each one of the steps within the tasks. So you can see here I've developed a series of sketches. This is two screens represented within a task flow, so two task steps. One is represented by a sign-in screen, the other is an explore screen. You can see that everything's pretty rudimentary, meaning that everything's pretty simple. Anywhere there is a photograph or some sort of image, you can see in this sketch I've represented it with an X. Same thing over here with the hero images within the grid structure of the layout. I have represented in the sketches here, however, but we will simplify those in the wireframe. Kind of an indication of what kind of sketch or what kind of icon might be representative. You also note that I've also included notes in the margins to kind of help me as the project progresses with cues and descriptions of what's included in the sketch. So let's get started. Let's launch Illustrator, and we're going to start a new document. I'm going to close this. You can see this is what our goal is going to be based on those two screens. We'll come back to this in just a moment. So we're going to create a new document, and we're going to call it wireframes, whatever you prefer. You can call it by the project name. I'm going to call this wireframes 2. And since we are going to be, since I did conduct my sketches or complete my sketches based up on the target device of an iPhone 10, I'm going to show you how to create that based upon those target dimensions for that target device. If you need to develop your wireframes for any other device, you'll need to make sure that you just double check what the pixel dimensions are for that display, the screen itself, not the overall size of the device, but just the screen display itself. In the case of the iPhone 10, at the highest resolution, which is for Retina display, the dimensions are 1125 pixels. So I've changed this to pixels by 2436 pixels. And our orientation is going to be portrait, so we'll make sure that we include portrait. You can also click down here on more settings, and you can change the number of artboards. You can also do that here. I'm just doing 2 artboards. If you had 10 steps in your task flow, then you would do 10 artboards. I've also changed the spacing to give me a little bit more room between each one of the artboards. I changed it to 40 pixels. You'll also need to make sure that this is set for RGB. And then we're just going to create the document. And what the result will be and what you'll end up seeing here are 2 very tall screens. This actually takes into consideration the camera up at the top of the iPhone 10 and on the notch, and then on either side of that will be the cell coverage, Wi-Fi connection, battery usage, as well as time and so on, depending on what the user sets. And again, we're going to shoot to have this kind of wireframe where you can see the photos are designated as just gray boxes. Let's kind of turn that on. You can see kind of the difference. We're going from this rough sketch, and then we're kind of making it a bit higher resolution. Same thing on this first screen. This is what we started with. You can see that we've simplified the logo itself so that the user doesn't become distracted by any kind of visual elements. Rather, they're focused on allowing us to test interactivity. You can see down at the bottom as well, let's see here, that there's some information just kind of roughly sketched in here. But now, since we're going to be testing these things, we've actually designated what that text, if you click on it, what that text will do, what that linking interactivity will do. You can see we've used variations of just gray from our swatches menu in this range of grays over here in the swatches panel to designate each one of the elements. Thus, we're not allowing the user to become distracted by colors, because we don't want input on colors at this stage of the game. Likewise, over here on this more complex page, you can see we've introduced the menu elements. We've very carefully chosen, based upon our sketch and based upon how we decided in that sketch that we want iFlow to work and where color might play a role in the future, we are designating different colors of gray. You can see the menu bar down at the bottom kind of pushes forward because it's a slightly darker gray than this lighter gray where the photo will be. Likewise, we've designated how this this liking system or preference system will work as well with these stars. We've designated the options menu, sometimes called a hamburger menu because of its resemblance to a hamburger or a sandwich. We've also included a profile designation where a profile photograph will go, as well as a simplified version of the logo. We've included designations as far as this being a search. Now, you'll notice originally we had a little magnifying glass sketched in there, but I've simplified that to just be search. Same thing down here where icons will eventually appear. Even though I've envisioned icons, I've simplified those to be just text with an indication that there will be an icon there eventually. So although I'm not going to go into detail on how each one of these elements, these are just basically shapes that I've created, and then once I've created these, once I have the precedence for this box, this field entry or form entry, then I just duplicate it down here. As you can see, as you can see on the screen, I'm duplicating by dragging it by holding down the Shift and Option key. That just saves you a lot of time, and then you go in and change that word, the text that says email to password. I'm going to undo that though. And then likewise, I did the same thing down here, although I changed things up a bit, and I filled in the box with a color. And since this is the main designation and visual cue, it's a bit darker than everything else.